Cruise ships are like the celebrity stars of our ports. Year after year, more luxury liners enter our harbours. The industry is booming. German tourists go on cruises all year round, even in the winter.
I like getting to see different places without having to unpack and repack my bags.
There's all these bars and 17 restaurants. You always have your home right with you.
But the ocean giants aren't just glamorous, they're also harmful to the environment. Their exhaust fumes contain sulfur, nitrogen oxides and soot particles. People are now becoming more aware of the problem.
It's terrible. We're from Essen, and Essen is clean now, but that wasn't always the case. People living on the coast always used to have clean, fresh air. Now it's the other way around.
Cruise operators have responded to the growing criticism and say their vessels have now become more environmentally friendly. But have they really? It's December here in Warnemünde on the Baltic Sea. Ever since cruise ship companies began offering more winter deals, the harbour here is busy even during the cold months. Germans are Europe's top cruise ship customers, with over 2 million passengers in 2017. And as the business increases, so does the air pollution it causes. We first visited Warnemünde in 2014, when we spoke with local residents like Magdalena Fleming. 5 years on, we're meeting her again. Magdalena originally moved to Warnemünde for the cleaner air. Cruise operators have been promising ships with cleaner exhaust fumes for years now. We asked Magdalena whether she feels they've kept that promise.
They haven't gotten any cleaner. I'm so angry. People bring it up from time to time and you believe them. You think the ships are finally going to get cleaner. But then nothing happens. It's all talk. The newspapers are full of it, but nobody's taking any action.
Dreamboats and their dirty air. What are cruise operators doing about it? This is Funchal, a port city on Madeira in the Atlantic Ocean just north of the Canary Islands. Down here is a popular destination for winter cruises. Most passengers on board are German tourists. We asked Axel Friedrich to join us on this trip. He's one of the world's leading experts on air pollution. Right now, he's setting up his instruments to measure the cruise ship's emissions. Axel Friedrich used to head the Department for Transport and Noise at the German Federal Environment Agency, UBA, and now regularly advises governments and environmental organizations. Like all larger ships, cruise liners emit pollutants into the air. The floating hotels need electricity, 24 hours a day, including when they are at port. They get that energy from fuel generators. The Cruising Lines International Association, or CLIA, says it has recently adopted the Exhaust Gas Cleaning Systems, EGCS. The association has reportedly fitted 111 of the 253 cruise ships in its fleet with the system. Just how effective are the filters? To find out, Axel Friedrich will be monitoring emissions on 3 separate days. The equipment he uses measures nitrogen oxides, soot, sulfur dioxide, and ultrafine particles. A cruise ship is approaching the harbour. Its exhaust plume is still only faintly visible. Axel Friedrich is particularly interested in the amount of fine particles it contains. 3 cruise ships have now docked at port. Even at a distance, Axel Friedrich's equipment is able to measure the particulate matter the cruise ships emit. But the wind direction keeps changing, so he can't say for sure which pollutants are coming from which ship. The portable device detects 65,000 particles. That's 3 times more than on some streets in Germany, where driving has already been banned. But this level is typical for busy small harbours like here.
There's only room for 3 ships to dock here, so only 3 ships are here. But in other ports like Barcelona, Dubrovnik, or Venice, up to 7 ships can dock each day.
The cruise industry does not consider one-off measurements like this to be significant. Yet the cruise operators won't provide us with more detailed information. Despite our request, neither CLIA nor the 2 big German companies, AIDA and TUI, provided us with pollution levels. Axel Friedrich was in Warnemünde in 2013 to measure the air pollution caused by cruise ships for the documentary series 45 Minutes. His film raised a lot of awareness for the problem. Tourists sought out this seaside resort for its clean air. But these days, even the pedestrian zone has a pollution level similar to a busy traffic intersection.
We're measuring ultrafine particles that are smaller than 300 nanometers. This extremely small matter can penetrate deep into the lungs.
In some cases, this can have fatal consequences. The particles also come from the ship's exhaust. Their engines are powered with diesel or heavy oil. What kind of fuel is heavy oil? The Kiel Water Police explained it well in 2009 in a documentary by the public broadcaster Norddeutscher Rundfunk on pollution by ships.
This is English crude oil from the 40s, crude oil from the North Sea. This is the stuff everyone is after. Crude oil contains lots of components. Each one can be sold better separately. That's why crude oil is refined. At the refinery, crude oil gets broken down into its components. There are gas components, liquid components, and also solid components. At the end of this process, there's this left over. It can no longer be refined. This is what powers ships. When I turn it upside down, nothing happens. That's how dense it is. At room temperature, it's like a road surface. This is the stuff ships run on.
No matter whether a ship is powered by heavy oil or diesel, its exhaust fumes will always contain 4 main pollutants. Carbon dioxide, the greenhouse gas that majorly contributes to global warming. Sulfur dioxide, which you may know from acid rain. It also affects marine life. Nitrogen oxides, also known as NOx. They made headlines during the diesel scandal and are especially harmful to children, pregnant women, and sick people. And finally, atmospheric aerosol particles. Many studies have shown that ultrafine particulate matter is most dangerous and can lead to pneumonia, heart attacks, and strokes. Professor Ralf Zimmermann is a chemist investigating the effects of fine particulate matter from ship exhaust fumes. In his research, he collaborates with other chemists, physicians, and biologists from the German Research Center for Environmental Health and the University of Rostock. They use a special method to show how particulate matter is harmful to humans. The researchers direct exhaust fumes from a ship's engine into their lab and expose it to living, cloned, human lung cells.
What's special here is the exposure method. Most experiments to date added the pollutant to a solution and used cells that were also in a solution. That's not natural, because lung cells are normally exposed to air. That's their characteristic feature, and we managed to simulate that with this machine. Here, the cells are out in the open, so to speak, and take in air pollution like real lungs would.
This is, to date, the closest research has come to faithfully simulating the impact of ship exhaust on living human cells.
Generally speaking, fine particles cause pulmonary inflammation. If you're exposed to particulate matter over long periods of time, that inflammation can become chronic. Chronic inflammation can lead to cardiac diseases and permanent pulmonary inflammation, which in turn can trigger or aggravate diseases like asthma or COPD.
It's an invisible threat. Numerous studies have found that our nostrils only catch and filter particles larger than 10 micrometers. Ultrafine particles are much smaller than even 2.5 micrometers. With no barrier to stop them, they can settle deep in our lungs. There, they can trigger dangerous inflammation. They can even enter our bloodstream, with severe consequences: heart disease, cardiac arrest, or strokes if the particles reach our brain. Zimmermann's colleagues can identify each individual component of particulate matter in ships' exhaust fumes. This lets them determine its precise effect on the human body. Up until a few years ago, research suggested emissions from heavy oil were much more harmful to humans than diesel. But more recent studies paint a bleaker picture.
We've looked at a number of different processes over the past years. Anything from emissions from car engines to wood combustion. Ship emissions have been found to have the biggest effect, regardless of whether they use diesel or heavy oil. In the long run, heavy oil has a larger carcinogenic effect, but both have equally high acute effects.
In their Rostock lab, the scientists can also measure pollutants emitted by ships at sea. For this, they suck the outside air into the lab on windy days. The instruments are so sensitive that they can pick up pollutants emitted from over 100 kilometers away. The team uses shipping routes and timetables to determine which vessel it's from. February 2019, on the banks of the Elbe in Hamburg. Axel Friedrich is here to measure the pollutant levels emitted by a cruise ship. His portable device is ultra-sensitive.
There's fine matter in the air here, even though the ship was far away. When it was passing us, the wind blew the other way. But even at a distance of 1 kilometer, I still get a reading of over 20,000 particles. And there's more nitrogen dioxide, too.
20,000 aerosol particles. That's roughly twice the average level in Hamburg, and the wind wasn't even blowing in the right direction.
That ship has no filter. The exhaust was being blown to the other side of the Elbe. The people on that bank were exposed to the fumes.
Magdalena Fleming from Warnemünde continues to worry about her health. She suffers from asthma. Last year alone, she saw 199 cruise ships dock here.
I'm not sure if it's still healthy for me here. It's just getting worse. And I'm concerned for my children and my grandchildren. I already have 3 great-grandchildren.
And how dirty is the air Dreamboats are emitting? This ship's charterer tells us that all the cruise ships operated for them always adhere to the official regulations in the Baltic Sea and elsewhere. Its shipping company says they are striving to operate their ships as cleanly as possible, but installing a filter isn't possible for technical reasons. We also spoke with several passengers.
Well, I know cruise ships are dirty, but I don't know the exact numbers. But sure, they're big polluters.
Does that worry you?
That worries me a lot, yes.
But you're still taking a cruise?
I'm still taking a cruise. In Hamburg, some roads have been blocked due to car pollution. But here in the harbor, these ships let their engines run day and night, and they're filthy. You can see the black clouds above them blast out.
It's terrible. We're from Essen, and Essen is clean now, but that wasn't always the case. People living on the coast always used to have clean, fresh air. Now it's the other way around.
In the German Climate Computing Center in Hamburg, researchers have calculated how air pollutants have dispersed through northern Germany. The results were sobering. Fine particles from ships and the health risks they bring with them have spread across the entire north of Germany. And cruise liners are just making matters worse.
I was shocked at how deeply ship emissions impacted areas not directly by the coast. Sometimes the effects could be seen hundreds of kilometers inland. We were taken aback when we realized just how much came from ship traffic. Before we thought, sure, there are 10,000 ships sailing in the North Sea, but what damage can they possibly do compared to 50 million cars? But if you look at the pollutants and at how much is emitted per kilometer and per ton of goods, you find it's much higher with ships than with cars.
Most people don't know that even further inland, the air we breathe is being polluted by ships out at sea. Cruise companies say they have taken action to become more environmentally sustainable. This is Kiel at the end of January 2019, where a new TUI ship is being presented. Just like other operators, this large cruise ship is equipping its new ships with so-called sulfur scrubbers and catalytic converters. They're meant to reduce sulfur dioxide emissions by up to 99% and nitrogen oxides by up to 75%. The additions are also meant to significantly decrease the amount of particulate matter released into the atmosphere. But it's hard to tell just how effective the equipment is. The cruise companies stay vague.
We achieve excellent values with the after-treatment of emissions. Some are even better than marine diesel values.
The company offers similarly generic statements to further questions submitted in writing. So it remains unclear whether sulfur scrubbers can actually reduce health risks.
You have to distinguish between environmental and health impacts. Sulfur emissions are known from acid rain and can be very harmful to the environment. But the effect of sulfur on our health is rather limited.
From 2020 onwards, the level of sulfur permitted in ship fuel will be restricted to 0.5%. That might sound good at first, but 0.5% is still 500 times higher than what is permitted in car fuel. On the Baltic Sea, the sulfur content cap is set at 0.1%. That's still 100 times more than car fuel. Nevertheless, shipping companies are looking to scrubbers to remain commercially viable. Because scrubbers strip sulfur from heavy oil as it burns, companies can keep relying on cheap fuel and simply wash it with scrubbers. Back to the port of Funchal. Axel Friedrich is trying to measure whether ships here have scrubbers. But again, wind conditions are unfavorable.
When a scrubber works well, it can reduce sulfur dioxide emissions by about 85 to 90%. But other issues like ultrafine particles remain unchanged. That's why TUI was praised a bit more than the other cruise ship manufacturers, because they got it a little better. But they're still far from good.
In January 2019, one of the boats in Funchal's harbour was TUI's Mein Schiff 1. The ship is reportedly equipped with an exhaust gas purification system. According to the company, it filters out 60% of atmospheric aerosol particles emitted. We asked whether this also included ultrafine particulate matter, but we didn't receive an answer, nor were we provided with any detailed emission values. Part of the problem is the International Maritime Organization, IMO. The United Nations agency has so far failed to set a limit for particulate matter emissions. This means it's up to experts like Axel Friedrich to point out the risks. It's 4 a.m. in Funchal, and Axel Friedrich is waiting for the Aida Nova. The ship's technology is a world novelty.
We want to see what the emissions of Aida's new ship are like. It's a completely new ship, powered by liquefied natural gas. So emission levels should be considerably below those of ordinary cruise ships.
Aida Nova is the first cruise ship in the world to run with the new technology. In theory, it does not emit nitrogen oxides, sulfur, or particulate matter into the air. But Axel Friedrich will have to wait for another day to verify those claims. The wind is keeping the exhaust gases out at sea, away from the measuring instruments. Is the wind still unfavorable?
Very. If you can even call this wind.
The ship is also equipped to be able to run on ordinary fuel.
This ship can also run on diesel. It has 2 tanks on board. So it would have been good to see what Aida is using when it's this far away from Hamburg.
For now, he'll have to wait. Aida later informed us that it wasn't possible to measure the air quality on the ship that day. They said they would invite Axel Friedrich on board to measure soon, though. But it remains to be seen when that will actually happen. At first glance, Aida Nova's chimney looks clean enough. Other cruise companies have announced they want to follow suit. Not TUI, however. The cruise line wants to do without liquefied natural gas for the time being, as there are currently only few ports that offer refueling possibilities. Do passengers even care about the natural gas technology?
When you think about it, it is important.
I think this is the first ship with liquid natural gas. Let's see how things develop. I think it's good.
It certainly affected my decision. I wanted to be on this ship.
It's quieter.
More eco-friendly?
Yeah, that too.
Is protecting the environment a factor in your decision?
No.
If we're being honest, not really.
Well, we
We had
had...
heard about it.
But it wasn't the deciding factor for us.
One problem is that Madeira doesn't yet have a fueling point for liquid natural gas that is large enough for the Aida Nova. So tankers like the Cardissa have to travel over 1,500 nautical miles from Rotterdam to the high Atlantic seas to refuel the new Aida ship. It's a long and expensive journey. An Aida ship is being serviced in Hamburg. According to company figures, the Aida fleet consumed over 50% more heavy oil and diesel in 2017 compared to 2011. The cruise line says more and more of its ships are being equipped with, quote, modern exhaust gas purification systems, but it remains unclear which systems these entail exactly and whether they also filter out harmful ultrafine particles. It seems northern Germany still enjoys the poshness of its luxury cruise liners. Hardly anyone protests. Hamburg is even planning a 4th cruise terminal. It will be the 2nd one in the Hafen City district, right by a residential area. Meanwhile, in other European cities, more and more citizens and politicians feel that the cruise line industry has got big enough. The city of Venice is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a popular cruise destination in Europe. Here, cruise liners pass straight by the city's top attractions. But they don't only block the view for locals, they also pollute the air. And yet, more than 450 of these ships still arrive here every year. bringing around 1.5 million tourists. The undertow created by large cruise liners alone is a risk for the old city, which was built on wooden poles. A UNESCO study presented to the Italian government cited these waves caused by water traffic as one of the major threats to the city. Axel Friedrich was in Venice in 2014. He used a handheld device to measure atmospheric aerosol particles.
I measured over 100,000 particles per cubic centimeter of air. Once it was even over 200,000. That's extremely high, and the area is already polluted.
Many Venetians have had enough. They formed a committee called No Grandi Navi, which means no big ships. Together with one of its members, Axel Friedrich tried to measure the air quality right in the wake of one of the cruise liners. But the Carabinieri, the state police, stopped their small boat. After taking down their names and addresses, the officers forbade any further measuring attempts. But it seems the protests in Venice have had an effect. The number of cruise ships has started to decrease. And as of 2021, only smaller cruise ships will be allowed to enter the famous Giudecca Canal. Venice isn't the only place where the cruise boom has faced backlash. Another one is Norway. The country is one of the top destinations for cruises from Germany. The Geiranger Fjord, another UNESCO World Heritage Site, is especially popular. The fjord attracts many cruise tourists. It's picture perfect. But the high mountains surrounding the narrow fjords mean exhaust fumes cannot disperse. During the shooting for this film, Hapag-Lloyd and AIDA were in the fjord. But the problem of concentrated pollution occurs with all cruise operators. The Geiranger Fjord isn't the only case like this. Organic farmer Anders Fredheim has his farm in Flam on the famous Sanja Fjord. There are no factories in sight. But that doesn't mean the air is always clean.
We often have very still days, and we often have 2 or 3 or 4 ships, and it's a very still day. And the 4 ships, plus all the express boats and the ferries and the yachts and the buses and the cars, and the sort of the sum of all this, it really, the air is absolutely terrible to breathe. And the smell of summer used to be new cut grass. Now the smell of summer is crude oil, fuel. You can burn fuel.
The Norwegian Parliament decided that from 2026 onward, only completely emission-free ships would be allowed into the fjords. Then diesel and heavy oil for ship fuel will be banned completely. Resistance to the booming cruise industry is also growing elsewhere. Amsterdam is demanding more money from cruise ships. Protests are taking place in Dubrovnik. And an American cruise ship captain was put on trial on pollution charges in Marseille. And in Warnemünde, a measuring station was set up in 2015, but not in the residential area. Germany's Ministry for the Environment provides no information on fine particulate matter. It also claims that larger particulate matter in Warnemünde is within range. The situation is similar in Hamburg. Here too, the Ministry for Environment tries to appease health concerns by saying that according to the measuring stations by the harbour, the levels are within compliance range. Does that mean that the German government thinks cruise ships pose no risk to our health? One of the measuring stations is located in the middle of the huge industrial port area. Axel Friedrich takes a closer look.
It seems to be pretty far away from the water. Distance dilutes the air, so there's less to measure. But the real problem is that nobody lives here, nobody walks here. So if I'm trying to measure the impact pollution is having on people's health, then I can't do that from this point.
The next measuring station, near the Altona cruise terminal, is tucked away behind tall residential buildings. Axel Friedrich says this location isn't ideal for measuring air pollution levels either, yet Hamburg's Department of Environment states the levels, again, are in range. There's just one problem. The EU has set a limit for weight of particulate matter in the air. Many experts argue that this form of measurement alone is not enough to determine actual health risks. Large, heavy particles are usually filtered out when we breathe through our nose. It's the smaller, lighter particles that are most harmful. Even just a few of the tiny particles can damage our health. That is why a limit value based on weight alone doesn't provide sufficient information. So is authorities' approach to measuring particulate matter adequate?
The ultrafine particles, which are very, very small, have no weight, and that's why they're so problematic, because they can penetrate deep into our lungs and into our brain. And these are really the things that should be measured. But only researchers or environmental organizations do. That's unacceptable.
The official limits by weight are merely an indication for atmospheric aerosol particles. In order to determine actual health risks, Axel Friedrich measures the amount of particles in the air, not their total weight. He's not the only one skeptical of official measurement procedures.
It makes no sense. From our point of view, measuring the number of particles in soot are absolutely necessary. I think authorities are aware that they could achieve much more with measuring finer particulate matter or even chemically determining the particles' composition. But they don't have the funds to implement the change, and the directives haven't been updated.
So far, there's no official body that regularly measures fine particulate matter. So you have to rely on measurements done by environmental associations or by people like me.
The Ministry for Environment in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern is the first one that wants to measure fine particulate matter pollution. In Schleswig-Holstein, authorities do not have current data on air pollution from ships and cruise ships in particular. The office responsible says it does not expect limits are being exceeded. Nonetheless, a measuring station for pollution by ships is planned for 2019 by the Kieler Förde.
It's baffling that in a federal state surrounded by the sea, as they say, there are no stations recording pollution by ships, and that all that gets done is what is officially prescribed, not what is actually necessary to protect people's health. I find that frightening.
The mouth of the Elbe in Lower Saxony, where freighters and cruise ships also abound. The Ministry of the Environment in Hanover has said the following regarding air pollution. Ship emissions evidently play a role in certain areas, but they are not seen to be a relevant factor in achieving air quality targets in Lower Saxony. Other places take a more modern approach. Every time a ferry from the shipping company Color Line from Kiel arrives here in Oslo, it gets connected to a power socket, a modernization introduced in 2011. As soon as the ship is stationary, a robot secures the plug. The shipping company opted to power its ship this way so that the sooty diesel engine can be switched off while in harbour.
The reason why we have this good result is that Color Line said that we are going to do this. They chose that this is the way to do it, and they also looked into the investment in it. But it was also very important to them to be the first to show that this is possible. And in that way, it's important to now give Kiel and Hamburg at the Port of Oslo, we want to challenge them and say, go for it.
In Hamburg, only one of the 3 cruise terminals has an onshore power supply, and only since 2017. The construction costs of around 10 million euros were paid by taxpayers, not the cruise ship company. An employee of the port administration demonstrates how the device works, theoretically. Because so far, only one shipping company, AIDA, has used the key with onshore power. And only 20 times in all of last year. Around 90% of all cruise ships do not use the environmentally more friendly option of onshore power, although many of them could. Another problem is that some ships are too long or the power terminal is too small. Recently, AIDA only used onshore power from 8 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Then it was switched off because from 10:30 a.m. onward, electricity becomes more expensive.
From a technical point of view, it's not difficult to build more onshore power stations in other ports. The challenge we face is that the price of diesel, which is crucial when electricity is being produced on board, has fallen significantly since 2014. In 2014, the business case for onshore power was profitable, but now it isn't because of the drop in diesel prices. Right now, there is basically no money to be made from onshore power stations across Europe, and it's cheaper for shipping companies to produce electricity on board with diesel.
At the other 2 Hamburg cruise terminals, onshore power stations aren't available for the time being. It is said that this will change in the next few years. But in the meantime, ships continue to pass on the option of using onshore power. Since the station was finished, 139 cruise ships capable of using onshore power passed by the station without plugging in. So far, the Hamburg Senate has done nothing to change this. It was different in Oslo. Here, ship operators bear the costs for the onshore power supply.
Our politicians are pushing us. They're wanting us to go forward with this investment because they find that it's important for the city. And Oslo is also trying to become one of Europe's green cities. So they're pushing us to try and find a solution.
In Kiel and Rostock, there are plans to offer onshore power for cruise ships. In Rostock's Warnemünde, however, the city and port companies still hope that the responsible federal government will lower the electricity price, if possible, for the entire day. Mrs. Fleming has been listening to this argument back and forth for years.
So again, we're the ones who are being kept waiting. At the moment, the conversation has fallen quiet. But it comes up time and again. That's what bothers me, because nothing ever gets done.
With onshore power?
Yes.
The cruise industry says cruise lines bring income through tourism to port cities. In Bergen, Norway, an expert from the business tested this claim. Svein Larsen used to advise cruise lines. Now he is professor at the University of Bergen.
Well, we have studied this extensively over many years. And we have data from thousands of visitors to our port. And we do know that the people who leave the least money in Bergen, that's the cruise tourists. Even the backpacker or the camper, even the German home mobile camper leaves at least twice as much money per person per stay as the cruise ship tourist does.
According to research by the University of Bergen, passengers from all cruise liners spent an average of 41 euros per person per visit on land. For 2017, cruise ship companies estimated that their passengers spent 48 euros a day on land in Germany. In Hamburg, the Chamber of Commerce calculated that in 2012, cruise tourism brought the city around 540 euros per passenger. However, the Hamburg Chamber of Commerce study had included additional data, including figures from the port anniversary. Hamburg saw a turnover of 270 million euros in 2012 with cruises. The city's politicians argued these figures justified the taxpayer co-funding costs for terminals and onshore power stations. But does the cruise boom also mean higher tax revenues? In the case of the market leader AIDA, the research is complicated. That's because AIDA belongs to the Italian company Costa, which in turn is a subsidiary of the US cruise group Carnival. Carnival is listed on the New York Stock Exchange in the USA. There, companies are subject to strict publication requirements. The SEC, the US Stock Exchange Supervisory Authority, is where you can find data on AIDA. In the many documents filed by the AIDA parent company Carnival, it says that AIDA is exempt from German corporation tax. AIDA was subject to a tax rate of 6% in Italy. This recently dropped to 5.5%. AIDA's response? The ships of the AIDA fleet sail under the Italian flag. It goes without saying that we not only comply with our tax and fee obligations in Germany and Italy, but anywhere else we travel to, in accordance with respective national legislation. We are a driving engine for regional economies and also for maritime sites such as Germany. Similar to AIDA, other cruise liners also enjoy tax concessions in their foreign home ports. This way, they can legally reduce tax payments in Germany. The corporations are aware of the environmental problems. They say they are open to new technologies and marine fuels, but the exhaust their dream ships emit remains nebulous, because operators do not publish precise data.
We've found that it's just as dirty as it was before as far as the particles are concerned. So far, we've seen no significant improvement in ultrafine particles.
It seems that for now it will be left up to shipping companies whether they want to consider health risks as well as profit or not.